The day was February 13th, 2017, and the location was Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia. The man in the circle is the brother of North Korea's infamous dictator, Kim Jong-un, but as he made his way down the airport, two women bumped into him, with one touching his face with wet hands, and the other rubbing a lethal NX nerve poison over it from behind. To these women, this was supposed to be a mere YouTube prank, but in reality, they just orchestrated one of the most well-coordinated assassinations in history. An assassination that also changed the course of their lives forever. False brotherhood. The first thing you need to know is that this story has many twists and turns, with an ending that you'll never see coming from a mile away. Starting with the revelation that the brother of Kim Jong-un, who's at the center of this story, was actually a half-brother who was kept a secret from his birth to his death. And this was done to fulfill one purpose: to conceal the secrets of the North Korean ruling family. October 10th, 2010. Journalists from around the world, even the US, descended upon the capital of North Korea to join the country's Workers' Political Party as they celebrated their 65th anniversary. 2 weeks earlier, Kim Jong-un had just been unveiled before the nation as the successor to then-leader Kim Jong-il, his father and mentor. Now everything was going to plan, but the following day, it all turned upside down. An interview of Kim Jong-un's estranged half-brother Kim Jong-nam was broadcast on Japan's Asahi TV. Now during this interview, Kim Jong-nam made some mind-blowing comments about why he should have been the leader of North Korea while condemning his brother's ruling power. This was a first time for many North Koreans even hearing the name Kim Jong-nam, let alone see his face in public. Born on June 10, 1970, Jong-nam's father, Kim Jong-il, and North Korean actress Sung Hya-rim were involved in this affair, even though Hya-rim was already married. Now, this relationship brought about Jong-nam, but because Jong-il was still struggling to ensure he would be the one to inherit the leadership from his father, he couldn't afford to let the truth out. And after trying for more than 6 years to legitimize their relationship, Hya-rim had to flee North Korea to the Soviet Union, while Jong-nam was sent far away from his father. In the late 70s, Kim Jong-nam started studying in Geneva, but was later moved to Moscow, which was ideologically seen as being more suitable for him. However, in that period, his father started a new relationship with a dancer, who would later give birth to 3 children, one of whom was his half-brother and future leader of the country, Kim Jong-un. Jong-nam disliked the fact that his father had started a new family because, quite frankly, no one even knew him. On top of that, Kim Jong-un was the one being educated about the revolutionary sides of North Korea and being regarded around the world as the heir to the Kim Dynasty. And even when Jong-nam returned to North Korea, he was blatantly denied living behind palace gates to avoid raising eyebrows, since he'd never been mentioned by any North Korean media. But while he was living in the shadows, his half-brother Kim Jong-un never even met him. Apart from the Korean practice of raising potential successors separately, Jong-un's mother, Ko Young-hui, was politically ambitious. She got into the ears of her husband's inner circle, making them believe her son should be the next in line of succession. And even if there was ever a possibility of Jong-nam becoming North Korea's future leader, one singular act he committed squashed his chances. In 2001, Jong-nam was apprehended while trying to enter Japan, using a fake passport under an alias that translated to Fat Bear in Chinese. Now this forced him into exile, until his father's death a few years later. And at this point, it felt like Jong-nam had nothing more to lose, making him go on record to oppose his brother holding on to power for another generation. His comments sparked a lot of controversy, especially after he began making unnecessary public appearances. He was seen every now and then, often in airports, where he would be crowded by dozens of journalists with insatiable appetite for the top secrets of the North Korean ruling family he just couldn't stop exposing. He would go as far as to tell a journalist how he doubted his brother's ability to manage North Korea. Now, if there's one thing we know about the North Korean government, and most governments, it's that they don't take kindly to people spilling the beans on their inner workings. And by running his mouth way too many times, some specific set of people wanted Kim Jong-nam dead. But it had to be in a way no one would expect. Pawns. In 2010, a North Korean agent based in China received a special order to terminate Kim Jong-nam. That agent, Kim Young-soo, was told that Kim Jong-nam was going to travel to China from Singapore, where he was then living. The agent's boss gave him a bundle of cash and ordered him to bribe a taxi driver to run over Mr. Kim in a fake traffic accident. But for some reason, Jong-nam never arrived at the scene. So again in 2012, he dodged another plotted assassination, making him beg for his life in a letter he wrote to his brother. The content of this letter read, "Please withdraw the order to punish me and my family. We have nowhere to hide. The only way to escape is to choose side." Yet that even couldn't keep him alive. Two beautiful young women are recruited by secret agents to carry out a deadly mission. Yet they insist that they had no idea that the mission involved murder and simply believed it was a mere YouTube prank. Now, does that sound slightly believable? Well, we certainly didn't think so. And neither did half of North Korea when the news of Kim Jong-nam's death emerged. However, their innocence was proven when the background story of what went down came out, but sadly, it wasn't enough to spare him from facing torturous punishments. One of the women manipulated in the murder of Jong-nam was 29-year-old Dawn Thi Huang. She was born in a Vietnamese village with the dream of becoming a celebrity one day. However, those dreams vanished when she lasted only 20 seconds on this TV program, Vietnam Idol, and she would work as an escort in Hanoi, where an undercover North Korean agent recruited her for the task. Now, the other woman was 27-year-old Sidi Aisha, the woman solely responsible for rubbing the lethal nerve poison on Kim Jong-nam's face. So, how did it all play out? 3 a.m., January 5th, 2017. Sidi, a worker at the infamous Flamingo Hotel Spa, was recruited by North Koreans outside of a famous bar in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Now, Sidi got herself in this line of work after dropping out of school at the age of 12 and getting married with a son at just 17. Unfortunately for her, the marriage broke down, making her leave her son in the care of her in-laws to become one of the thousands lured into making a living in the sex industry. Now, at that time, Sidi was approached by a taxi driver who told her he had a Japanese client looking for someone to act in a reality TV show and that she had the perfect looks for the job. The taxi driver then took Sidi to an upmarket shopping mall the next day, where she met a man named James. James told her he was a Japanese TV producer making candid camera-style shows for YouTube, but in reality, James, real name Ri Ju-woo, was a 30-year-old North Korean agent who was about to ruin her life. James told her that her first job was to approach 3 men at random in a local mall and smear baby oil on them before apologizing and walking away, while he filmed their reactions on his iPhone. Now, Sidi was skeptical at first because it was a pretty weird job, but after hearing that she would earn more than $100, all her doubts were cleared. You have to understand that back in the spa where she worked at, Sidi just earned $15 for every man she massaged and slept with, while her bosses took the rest. So, getting paid $100 was a blessing, and she didn't hesitate to carry out the task. However, after over a week's work of rubbing baby oil and hot sauce on Chinese-looking victims, James promised Sidi that her footage would make her a famous actress on YouTube and that all she had to do was come back one more time to carry out one last prank at the airport. However, this time the victim would be Kim Jong-nam. Assassination. As Sidi filmed pranks for money in both Phnom Penh and Kuala Lumpur, North Korean agents worked behind the scenes, desperately trying to track Kim Jong-nam, who was constantly on the move in order to carry out their deadly plan. He was the only credible rival to his brother, and the North Korean government tagged him a dead man walking, as they suspected he was passing secrets to the United States. And as these agents would get closer to him, their suspicions were confirmed after Jong-nam reportedly met with a CIA agent on arriving in Malaysia and exchanged a laptop full of data for a bag full of $100 bills. 2 days before the assassination, Sidi, now back in Kuala Lumpur and lavishing a few $1,000s, was given a $200 bonus and told the next job could propel her into international stardom. She didn't quite believe that, but as long as it brought more money to her purse, she went for it. 8 a.m., February 13th, 2017. Sidi was at a coffee house inside Kuala Lumpur International Airport, with one man directing her YouTube prank led her behind a pillar near the AirAsia self-check-in kiosks. There, a supposed director named Chang told her that a second woman would be joining the prank this time around. All Sidi had to do was play her role and leave the scene as soon as the second woman played hers as well. Less than 5 minutes later, Kim Jong-nam strolled into the terminal, making Chang identify him to Sidi by noting his gray blazer and dark backpack. Then he told her to look away and stick out her hands as he took out a small container the size of a hotel shampoo bottle and poured an oily substance into her palm. Sidi later revealed that this substance smelled like machine oil and didn't feel like the baby oil she was used to. Chang reminded her to apologize after striking and to leave quickly, since the target looked rich. He also advised her to wash her hands immediately after the prank was carried out. At exactly 8:59 p.m., Sidi slipped up behind Kim Jong-nam, covering his eyes as if playing peekaboo, and then wiped her hands over his mouth, leaving an oily smear. Jong-nam was puzzled, but before he could realize what was happening, Doan Thi Huang approached from his front, threw her arms over his shoulders, and also rubbed her hands across his face. She apologized and hurried in the opposite direction. This oil that was applied was seeping into Jong-nam, jamming his muscle receptors, causing consistent contractions as if struck by endless cramps. The liquid was VX, a chemical nerve agent that the UN classifies as a weapon of mass destruction. All it takes is a little drop to kill somebody. But Kim Jong-nam had absorbed a lethal dose and now was living on borrowed time. He would move towards the bathroom but then lost his only chance to wash off the poison and survive by going to an information desk. There he told the attendant that he had been rubbed with some type of liquid and needed assistance. The attendant then led him to 3 policemen who couldn't care less about what he was going through and directed him to the airport medical clinic. But about after 3 minutes of walking, Jong-nam's knees had stiffened and his feet dragged. The nerve agent was relentlessly stimulating his muscles, and his respiratory system was already collapsing. Once he got to the clinic, he got hit with a seizure and collapsed to the ground as his lungs contracted, never relaxing to allow air out. Nurses fixed him to an oxygen tank. When he was taken to the ambulance, paramedics noticed a failing heartbeat. En route to the hospital, it flatlined. He had lasted a little more than 15 minutes after the poisoning. Kim Jong-nam was confirmed dead. Consequences. Now, how could have Sidi known that she was a pawn in carrying out a high-profile assassination? In the minutes after washing off the nerve agent from her palms and saving her own life, she spent about 3 hours wandering the airport shopping mall, buying luxury items with the cash she was paid. On the other hand, after Jong-nam's death, it initially seemed that Kim Chol, as identified on his diplomatic passport, similar to John Smith in Korean, had died of a heart attack. Malaysian authorities didn't have a clue about the nerve agent, nor did they know they were dealing with a person of geopolitical importance. The only thing that could have given him a hint of his status was the $120,000 found in his backpack, divided into 4 bricks of $100 bills. That was the alleged money he received from the CIA he met up with days earlier. As for the men who planned the entire ordeal, a high-level staff member of the North Korean embassy sought them off on flights pre-scheduled to depart right after the assassination. They took a circuitous flight path, circumventing countries that might have grounded their planes should the murder have been discovered while they were in transit. And by the time anyone guessed what had happened, they were already safe in Pyongyang, North Korea. The following day, though, South Korean news agencies announced that Jong-nam had been murdered. Apparently, Malaysian officials had confused the Koreans and notified the wrong embassy. That aside, airport CCTV of the attack was leaked to a Japanese news outlet, and the story went viral, dominating the stations around the world. Doan Thi Huang was arrested when she naively returned to the airport that day, while Sidi was arrested at the spa where she worked at as a masseuse. Initially, she believed her arrest was merely another YouTube prank, but soon understood its seriousness when she learned that she could face the death penalty for her actions. Now at this point, Jong-nam's death had created a hostile atmosphere between Malaysia, China, and North Korea. The North Korean ambassador to Malaysia confronted a siege of reporters outside the morgue housing Jong-nam's body. He protested that Jong-nam was a North Korean citizen, and he accused Malaysia of trying to tarnish the image of his country by collaborating with South Korea. He also demanded the corpse, but was denied access to it by Malaysian authorities. Now, while back in North Korea, the government denied accusations that Jong-nam had been killed by a nerve poison, insisting that he simply suffered a heart attack. And finally, the Chinese government felt the North Koreans had betrayed their alliance by assassinating Jong-nam, as he was placed under their care from his teenage years. China decided to cut off coal to North Korea, while North Korea barred all Malaysians from leaving the country, essentially holding them hostage. But here's the thing, as much as Jong-nam's death stirred geopolitical turmoil among these countries, no one truly understood how it could have been possible for him to be killed with a nerve agent, and both women who carried out the poisoning didn't die as well. Essentially, what happened there was that the liquid Seedy rubbed on Jong-nam's face was likely not true VX. Experts have suggested that a modified version of normal VX, called X2, was employed instead. So what the women were likely doing was creating active VX on Jong-nam's face by each delivering their own ingredient. Like, do you understand the complexity of this? This complicated method of poisoning Jong-nam had so many advantages. First, the toxin would have been safe until activated, meaning as Seedy carried out the VX2 chemical on her palm, it had no effect, and it wouldn't kill her. While Duong may have avoided absorbing enough to make her ill, as there was only a minimal amount of toxin on the thick skin of her palms, and she quickly washed it off. But anyway, a month and a half after the incident, Malaysia ordered North Korea to free its citizens by turning over Jong-nam's corpse and allowing 3 wanted North Koreans to fly home. Nevertheless, someone had to pay for Jong-nam's murder, and this left only 2 imprisoned women to face justice, which under Malaysian law was death by hanging. July 2017, Seedy was led into court for her first hearing. She entered into a not guilty plea, claiming that she had thought this was all for a YouTube prank. This was a woman who, off the top of her head, had no idea who Donald Trump was, never listened to the news, nor did she read newspapers. She was completely oblivious to what she had done, and before her trial, she was placed in solitary confinement for a year, with constant taunting from the prison wardens who persuaded her to plead guilty or face the possibility of North Korea bombing her home country, Indonesia. And then out of nowhere, in comes the twist.
Nggak nyangka kalau hari ini hari kebebasan saya. Terima kasih kepada pemerintah.
March 2019, the murder charge against Seedy was dropped without any reason provided. Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad asserted that there were no negotiations involved and that the decision was simply in accordance with the rule of law. However, that was complete and utter BS. Following a ruling that both Seedy and Dewan were to testify in court, a diplomatic campaign ensued in Indonesia. President Jokowi engaged in 2 meetings with Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad to advocate for Seedy's release, which was obliged. Seedy's charge was dropped and she was released from jail, while Dewan was offered a deal, accept a lower charge of causing hurt with a dangerous weapon, and face 10 years in prison, instead of a mandatory death by hanging if found guilty of murder. Well, she agreed and was given 3 years and 4 months of incarceration. Now, this has made us realize that the only reason why Seedy was released was that the Malaysian government couldn't afford to destroy its ties with the Indonesian government by executing her. On top of that, North Korea and Malaysia have 4 decades of good diplomatic trade ties, with the UN even naming Malaysia as one of the key culprits in orchestrating shady deals with North Korea. All 3 governments have back channels with one another to preserve their relationship. Dewan took the fall for Seedy and was let go. This was pretty confusing to the media, but at the same time it helped Seedy get the fame she desired, maybe just not in the way she wanted. She was flown home by private jet and taken straight to the Indonesian president. For 2 months, she was guarded in a safe house until the security risk around her was reduced. North Korea. Now we all know who killed Jong-nam, but there's still one question plaguing the minds of journalists to this day. And that question is, did Kim Jong-un really order the assassination of his half-brother? Well, the answer's complicated as there are many things to consider. The first thing you need to know is that after Jong-nam was exiled from North Korea, he moved to Macau, a Chinese-controlled territory near Hong Kong. There he regularly visited China and maintained close ties with Beijing, primarily through his uncle, Jang Song-thaek, the second most powerful man in North Korea following his father's death in 2011. Mr. Song-thaek was China's representative in Pyongyang, the capital of North Korea, and was the source of Jong-nam's income. However, Song-thaek was executed in 2013 on orders of Kim Jong-un. This execution robbed Jong-nam of his strongest ally in North Korea and annihilated his last link with the Kim family. That, however, didn't stop him from openly condemning his half-brother's actions. China is one of North Korea's only real allies here, but their relationship has become marred by Kim Jong-un's aggressive pursuit of a nuclear program, despite international sanctions supported by Beijing. So Jong-nam was seen as more of a traitor for supporting China and other countries and condemning his own people, most especially his brother. Another reason Kim Jong-un could have ordered the assassination was because many viewed Jong-nam as the rightful successor to his father, even though he never actually had an interest in assuming leadership. So to answer the question, Kim Jong-un ordering this assassination on his own brother doesn't really seem like an act that could have benefited him in any way. Plus, there are no records out there that support the theory that he did so. But one thing is certain, and that's the fact that Jong-nam's death served as a warning directed towards high-level North Korean defectors like Tae Young-ho, the former North Korean ambassador to Great Britain, who became a critic of his own country. This warning was successful, as Tae Young-ho and several others withdrew all public engagements and went undercover during that time. Now, personally, we don't think North Korea cared whether those women were released or executed. For them, the incident was over long ago. North Korea hasn't been indicted in Jong-nam's death, and the people who were connected to the killing got away scot-free. And as the assassination and trial showed, Kim Jong-un and his regime can act with near total impunity, and will probably do so again.